In a hypothetical world where your reader has had your manuscript for several days and is somehow right in front of you, setting the scene. They're on the chapter where you deliver your big emotional rug pull. You reduce the cast by at least one human and everyone's favorite dog. Your reader turns the page, barely sighing through their nose. They're supposed to be haunted, permanently traumatized. What did you do wrong? Attack on table. Ryan, why didn't they cry?
Because you suck at your job, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about tear extraction. It's hard. It's hard to know if you landed the needle. I would say I mean, I don't know. This is a hard one for me because I second guess all my scenes, so I don't know if they're hitting or not. This would be probably the thing that you lean on your beta readers the most for if you're trying to hit like impactful scenes or emotional, moments. Then you're gonna need second opinions if you're anyone like me. Sean, you might be better at that than I am.
Well, I mean,
But
you're the only way to know for sure that your emotional scenes are landing is going to be getting it from somebody else's point of view. Obviously, you think you killed it.
you probably did actually kill it. That's the problem. Um, I mean, I would say the thing I hate the most about these kind of moments of when you're writing them is, I think authors tend to get too like heady, like in the character's head, and we start experiencing like what emotional scene is happening through the character's inner thoughts. And I like there's a place for that. I can get behind that to a degree, but I think because I'm such a cinematic writer that I imagine like if I were to write an emotional scene and I'm in my head depicting it like a movie, and then over the course of whatever tragedy is befalling my main character, you just hear his inner thoughts describing his emotions as he's going through them. That would be like ruinous for me. I would be pulled out immediately, and I just like I can't deal with this. So I kind of receive literature the same way. As if I'm trying to mentally put myself into the scene of what's happening and then connect my emotions, how I would feel with like how the character is feeling, but I'm simultaneously being told how to feel. It's kind of disruptive. um
I'll
what
get
what are
with you
your
there.
thoughts on it?
I would get with you there, and I think that one thing we've said before is that the scene matters a lot too, like what's going on in it, and like for example, when Boromir was killed at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, he got hit with a bunch of arrows and everything, but at no point did you go into his head or Merry and Pippin's as they're watching it all go down. Uh, but it was enough of a the scene was put together in such a way that it was almost redeeming for him giving that sacrifice, fighting till the last breath against all odds and everything, to know that for the reader to know, like, okay, this is emotional because he is making up for everything that he did that was not nice for the remainder of the book by, giving his life for his friends. And there's a lot of emotion that comes from that. And especially when he's apologizing afterwards as he's passing away in Aragorn's arms and everything too. You get a lot of those emotions without necessarily hearing a single thought of the character. And I think that there's value in knowing what characters are thinking, but it, like what you said, it shouldn't be the only thing that the reader gets to focus on if you really want them to get tugged on in their heartstrings.
Yeah, I think what you're kind of alluding to is like a proper setup, and I think a lot of what we encounter when we're reading things is just like a poor setup, and it kind of because it's essentially like if you think of an emotional beat you're trying to write in your story as a shot that you're trying to make, if you're not properly positioning yourself, if you're not taking the right calculations in your shot, you're going to miss. And the same thing with literature. If you're not doing proper setup, it doesn't not all setups need to be long, but they need to be there in order to really trigger that. And if you're not doing that, then you're going to miss. I think another problem that we're encountering with a lot of literature, particularly today, is like this emotional swing of not only like characters having almost bipolar like reactions to things, but also like how quick they recover from something tragic, or I guess the opposite is more true to life, where it's like, oh, we're happy and now we're sad. Like that would be more acceptable if like something crazy happened and suddenly you turn on a dime. But for the inverse to happen is kind of crazy, where it's like we were we were weeping and now we're just jovial. Like it doesn't feel real.
I think that those 2 points kind of go hand in hand because if you don't give your readers whiplash by your character suddenly feeling better and walking away from, being in a downtrodden moment, um, it you have to kind of set up a reason for them to change, and there's always that little moment where you're resistant to either letting go of what's bothering you or almost disbelieving that this thing in front of you is making you upset. Why is it happening? Kind of thing. Like there is a quick but present thought process to this that you should find some way to convey just so it isn't just a snap reaction because that's not really believable. Um, unless like your character is meant to be psychopathic and you didn't really know what they were thinking to begin with. But that's aside from the point of like making a big emotional, you know, scene. That subject is over there. Like as far as like building it up and making it impactful for your reader, sure, change the emotion, but do it in a way that takes enough time for the reader to keep up with it. Um,
Yeah, I would dare say I think it's I'm gonna say something extreme here.
oh no,
I think it borders on lazy writing, because I
for
think what's
shame.
happening I know, I think what's happening is I think it's a fear of the writer to change their character in the face of something that is changing. Like something has changed them. They've witnessed something or experienced a thing that should, by all rights, change them. And the writer is just like, well, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to write them if I change them. I figured out in my head how they should be. And now they've experienced this thing. Either A, I don't want to figure out how to change them, or I just can't figure out. And therefore I don't. So they go back to being who they were. And it's just like a snap, a rubber band kind of effect. Um, I guess I shouldn't insult people by saying it's lazy, but it is kind of lazy to a degree.
They come here for the
Um,
hot takes. And
yeah.
well, I mean, since we're just doing that, I have my own hot take. That was our last point we wanted to discuss, which is if obviously most of the big emotional parts are going to be like sad ones, um, where you are trying to, really hurt your reader's feelings and everything. It doesn't have to be 3 chapters long. Don't dwell on the sadsy wadsy parts. You have a story to finish. Move things along. Yes, it can still bother them later, but proceed with the plot. We don't need 6 whole pages of your primary character's disbelief and utter inability to get over it.
Yeah, I think the key word you said there was it can bother them. It doesn't need to haunt them every time they get a flicker of the memory of what they befell.
Right. Does that kind of sadness exist? Yes. Can your story proceed with it? No.
Well, it can proceed with a tidbit of
Crippling,
it. It doesn't. Yeah.
crippling sadness where it can't get
Well,
out of bed, refuses to eat or drink,
because
hasn't
I
seen
think that's
sunlight in weeks.
what you just said is a great point. Is it is crippling, and as a story progresses, we as writers need our characters to not be crippled unless that's part of the story, like unless that's an actual story, like the English Patient or something, um, where getting over that is the story. But if it's anything beyond that, you as a writer need to figure out how can I get my character to handle this, live with it, maybe still be haunted by it, but still be able to move forward, because I need them to walk. I need forward motion
Yes.
in some capacity.
If your character has a world to save and the clock is ticking, we don't have 2 weeks for them to be sad. You got there's things to do, or everybody else is gonna go through what their friend just went through.
And when you're coming up on the 13th hour Stranger Things and you're about to fight the big bad, don't sit around for 6 hours talking about how you feel about a thing or why something's different. There's a time for that, and that's after you've defeated them. Talk about that stuff afterward.
Well, I mean, that's actually a pretty decent point where everybody is having the emotional moments and everything past the point of having the job, and you see that a lot in cinemas and shows. The big sad funeral is of the sacrificed awesome character that you got rid of and broke everybody's hearts. The reader gets to cry about it when it happens. The characters get to cry about it when the job is done, at the funeral afterwards, or whatever substitutes for a funeral in the world you wrote. Just because the reader is going to feel it, the character may not be able to. So, what is the common advice that we've seen for how to make the reader feel it without making the character
So I would say the first one we see very
unmoving?
similarly is. Oh, I thought you were passing my way. I'm sorry. So I think the first big piece of common advice we're seeing is to let emotion come from subtext instead of like over explaining like the emotion that you're feeling. And I think that kind of falls in line with like joke telling. It's like, if a joke is written well, you don't have to explain it. And the same thing is like if an emotional beat is written well, if it's set up well, then you don't really need to lay it out for the reader. The reader's going to feel it the way the character's feeling it.
Yeah, it's almost show don't tell territory. Like, you don't need to find 6 different ways to, or 6 different prosy flowery descriptions of my character is sad. I don't think that that's necessary. I appreciate that you're capable of writing it in that many different ways, but just keep writing. You'll find an opportunity to use them all. You don't need to use them all here. You get the point across, but there's other aspects than the character's own inner narrative that will dictate just the horror and just the pure shock of the moment. Figure out what those are. What's happening in the scene? What's happening around them? What are other characters doing? What is the person who just got hurt doing? Things like that. Those are the things that you spend your time kind of circling around. Um, I accidentally went into the show don't tell, but show don't tell is it's back.
Yeah, it's back. I would say, yeah, I agree to an extent with show don't tell. If what we're talking about in terms of telling is blatantly like describing emotional thoughts.
Hmm.
If you're telling the audience, like, if you're giving just more emphasis to the environment through telling, I think that's okay. But I think living too much in a character's head, you can find yourself repeating thoughts constantly.
Yeah,
That's kind of why I disagree with a lot of advice in regards to this, which because it could just, Ouroboros kind of feeds into itself. Another good one is avoid cliches. I'm on the fence about it personally. What are your thoughts about cliches and emotional beats?
I think that cliches should be a last resort. I think you can borrow from them, but when you borrow from a cliche, it basically just becomes a trope, and tropes aren't necessarily taboo. Cliches, sh- the crappy thing that every writer hates is the reason that they are cliches is because they work. So don't lean on cliches throughout your entire story, but if a cliche is the right way to write your scene and it won't feel impactful emotionally without it, and you're sure of that, maybe you got to take one for the team.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point there. I didn't think about this when we were first doing this, but just as you were talking there, I think a good question in regards to this advice would be, at what point does a cliche stop being a cliche and then become a trope? Because tropes are very common. They're very useful in many respects. They can be overdone, and so you do have to be aware of that. But they're utilized because they're successful. There's a whole book about how to make a villain, how to get heartstrings pulled, save a cat or kick the dog, save a cat, stuff like that. So it's like that information's there, and it's really kind of incumbent on you to change what is the dog, what is the cat, but the result is still the same. If you watch someone kick the proverbial dog, you're going to dislike them. You watch someone save the proverbial cat, they're going to like them. I think this is branching. I'm going to use this as an example because we were talking about it earlier. It's branching from the emotional beat, but it's a good example of what we're talking about in terms of how useful cliches can be, I guess. And that's when we were talking about what I was writing with Fisk, where I wrote this thing and I wrote this character that a lot of my female readers, my beta readers, came back where it's like he's kind of an asshole, he's a jerk, and they all felt that way up until this very specific point, which is roughly 3-4 pages away from where you initially meet the guy, and he offers to buy the main character, the narrator, a hot dog, and suddenly he's like this perfect angel. It's and so just like simple gestures of courteousness can change the reader's perspective on somebody. So like these things have impact. These simple cliche moments can have an impact. I'm yeah, I guess the question would be, is at what point does a cliche stop being that and turn into a trope that is commonly used?
Uh, I don't have the answer for you.
Well, I came here for answers, Sean. What's the point of this if we're not answering? No, I agree. It's a confusing thing. I kind of talk myself into a circle.
It's a fine line to walk, though. I mean, you don't want to borrow every single beat from any well played out thing, but just you take the pieces that your story needs to really feel it, like that you're getting something across here. Um, it just does. It works, like as Joe Dirt's father would say. Uh, so don't
What's
feel
our next
bad
piece?
if you what?
Go on.
So don't feel bad if you have to use it. This one confused me though. The use a close POV point of view. That doesn't help anybody who. I guess there is something to be said about if you're writing in third person, then you're obviously then then the narrator should be close to the the scene in which this emotional rug pull is happening. Like the scene should maybe feel claustrophobic, um, with a lot of detail on what is happening around them and everything. If you're writing it first person, though, wouldn't you say that? So that means the character who is narrating is the one who's holding the dying friend or animal or whatever the emotional
Yeah.
baggage of that moment is.
I'm pretty firmly against this advice. And it's common advice, and I think people do it a lot because they think it's like, you know, to really like bring home the emotion, it's good to be in the character's head. You know, that's why like first person stories are generally good for more emotional stories, because like you're in there more, and it gives you more freedom as a writer to, you know, talk about thoughts and feelings. But I to me that's the same exact reason why I hate the advice, is because it feels like a pit trap. Like you get in there, is it good to experience something firsthand? Yeah. But it also gives you the ample opportunity to write way more than you need to about someone's feelings on a thing. And then you start like rabbit holing into emotional spirals. And it is rare that that is a good thing. It can be good, but it shouldn't be like as common as it is done, you
There's
know?
always exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, and so I always say don't do that if you can avoid it.
Um, well, how do you like to handle an emotional scene when, like, think about a couple of ways that you've done it and walked away from it relatively confident that you made something land? Give another hot dog example.
Well, I can't say I'm confident. I wrote something in the same book where I thought I gave it a lot of setup. I'm going to try to speak vaguely here because I don't want to spoil my own thing. But I introduced this character that died early on. It's part of like what it's the motivating factor of the story itself. And then slowly, as that story is revealed, it is this character had effectively, we'll just say effectively, been reborn in the body of an animal. And at the end of the book, this animal meets what was he considered to be like his mom. Um,
Mm, okay.
and the narrator knows this. The animal knows this. The woman does not, but she like has a sense of it. And I thought that would be a good emotional thing. I have not gotten feedback on it, so I don't really know if it's hitting. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's, you hope it does because that's how I wrote it to hopefully land, but I don't know if it is. I would say personally, I kind of just set it up the way you think it would work for you, and put it in front of some eyes of some people and get their opinions on it. And then more, and if they're like, no, do some delving, you know, ask them follow-up questions, be like, well, what do you feel like didn't hit for you, like why didn't you get teary-eyed, you know, try to get some baseline questions in there.
It's really
um
hard to ask somebody why they didn't feel a thing. Uh,
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, you'd have to, I don't know, look up some like they do it in test groups for a lot of things. I would look up test group questions to try to determine, you know, to give you the answers you're looking for without necessarily asking the question directly, you know.
well, not everybody's going to be able to set one of those up. I'm afraid I just disagree with you on this point.
I didn't say it was commonly possible. I said look into it and see if you could do that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. We do have a note on here regarding like giving focus, disbelief some focus.
I'm
Um,
a huge fan of that. Because human beings are just wired when something bad happens to them. This can't happen to me. This shouldn't happen to me. I don't deserve this. It's part of the panic process wired into our brains. And if you ignore it, then it's probably going to steal from the scene. Um, it is something that I view as separate of the crippling emotional pain that I think is a very necessary part of the process. I'm also a very big fan of subtextual foreshadowing. Uh, am I a master at that, or do I utilize it very often? Not so much, but I have a scene in the book that I'm writing right now where a character is basically having a dream flashback of the reason he's an asshole. And I spend, oh God, I don't even remember, 3 or 4 chapters making you not like him before you're meant to go, oh. Now I can't not like him, or at least that's the idea. Not to say that, having something bad happen to you is an excuse to be a douche, but some people lose their ability to give a damn. And I think that that kind of goes into the setup. Um, your characters should be away. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a horrible thing come, like, back from the past to show why somebody is some way or whatever, because big things that happen to us often shape us. So you kind of have to just look at it through that lens. And I know that like writing flashback scenes is taboo, whatever. Uh, but that that subtext being there, kind of laying it out. Gosh, if you really careful about it and you show the reader just enough before that big emotional rug pull and how these things got set up, how these dominoes fell over the last 3 chapters, not only are they going to be sad, they're going to wonder, they're going to hate themselves for not realizing it was happening beforehand in the extent of like a big sad thing. You can take your time and put your story together, setting this up. And I would almost argue that subconsciously, your reader might know it's coming and it will still hit them as a shock, but then they're prepared to feel those feelings, and then you have the luck of having them they're ready to feel them, then they feel them. I feel like that would kind of help lead up to a good payoff if you're trying to make your reader cry. What do you think?
I think I agree with you. I think a key thing in this that you're describing is you're letting the character be the character, and as the narrator, you're not trying to justify anything. You're not trying to necessarily allude to anything beyond what the story is and how the character is. So I think like going around and constantly reminding your readers like, oh, he's got a past, or well, things like the statements like that are more damaging to what you're trying to do, because what happens is you're setting up an expectation, and if you don't fucking knock it out of the park, it's going to feel like a dud.
Yeah.
So let the character be the character, and then pull the rug out with the reveal of information, and then let the audience, the reader, feel how they're going to feel. Um,
Well, I'm
Certainly
also
don't stand there and
making
be like, you should have been sad for him.
well, yeah,
Um,
but I'm also just making the argument for well done foreshadowing and
yeah,
uh just making the reader, like, I guess, prepared to feel an emotion without realizing it. And I know that that's a tall order and everything. It can't be done in every book, but it is something that I think was worth mentioning, that if you can pull it off, I would appreciate that very much in your story.
yeah. I
Um,
think we could probably have a whole another discussion on like proper foreshadowing, because I do think what you're saying is make your foreshadowing subtle. Don't be overt with it.
yeah,
That's the part I'm saying is don't be overt with it, because you could hurt yourself in the long run.
yeah,
Um, One thing I like to do is I like to switch like point of view. Um, Not because like it's dynamic or anything like that, but I like to experience grief and stuff through the character, not necessarily their own grief and stuff like that. I like to be in their shoes as they're witnessing grief. like the scene I mentioned earlier. Like I liked the fact that my narrator knew something, was
Mm,
not a part of it, was not, didn't have any tangibleness between these two characters, and he was just sitting there with the information, not knowing, should I share this, should I not, I probably shouldn't, and just watch this happen, and then kind of feel that inner pang of like, ugh, God, this is hard, this is hard to watch, kind of thing.
yeah. Well, I think that that probably activates the sympathy almonds in your reader too, because you've been you've been walking alongside your narrator the entire story. So you've gotten to know him very, very well, and he's feeling that pang of sympathy for a scenario that he is not allowed to explain. There's no one better in your story for the reader to kind of take that tiny emotional journey with than your narrator. So it it's not sad in the typical sense so much as it is sympathetic. Um, and I think that
Heartfelt, yeah.
yeah, and that could really tug at the heartstrings of somebody who's reading because you've you're using the character who isn't really involved, he's just an observer, but he is the character that your reader identifies with the most. So the reader's most likely to be pulled into the same emotional state as your character. So I can get behind that 100%. Um, use your characters that are going to be the ones who know something is being lost or regained or something like that and see it happen because then your reader can feel it with them.
Yeah, I think set up, slow burn, let a thing kind of evolve, you know, set the pieces and let the board play itself is a good way I've heard it put. Is, essentially you're setting dominoes, and then you're just doing the thing and knocking them over, and then if everything is plotted correctly, it should, create the pattern that you've laid out.
Yeah.
Um,
So I don't have any other big feelings about this kind of thing. I I feel like we've attacked that table.
yeah, we're not big feely guys, so like we tried our best.
I don't have feelings.
Yeah. Oh,
All
now I
the
can.
edge on Fitz of no, I can't say that phrasing.
Yeah, come back to our. Oh, shit. Come back for our next attack on table where we talk about being man and blowing stuff up and other manly stuff.
Boom. Oh,
That's how we are. The next 3 episodes have to be like super manly stuff because we talked in one episode about feels. Yeah. If you guys like what we're doing here, you want to support the channel, please, strike the like and subscribe.
Semper Scribe.
Yeah. See, if I say it, then he has to say it. That's how it works. Um,
Now you have to
if you
stop
guys,
saying by the power of the internets.
if you guys have any AOTs you'd like us to tackle, throw that in the comments. We'd love to hear your guys' suggestions.
Yeah.
If you guys agree with us, disagree with us,
Yeah,
let us know.
if you've got any tried and true tricks for how to really pull the emotion into a scene, slap it down in the comments. We want to hear from
Please let us
you.
know. Yeah,
Yep.
let us know.
Reminder:
Help us.
the end of the month is coming up, so we should be hopefully releasing a new video for an author who spent some time writing a tell-a-tale for us, and we'll release that and send it over to them on the last Tuesday of the month. And then next month we will have a new one for you to tackle and get after with the same prize at the end of that month as well.
And keep an eye out for, the ones that we're dropping on the weekends for any of the guests that participate. Check out their videos, leave comments, let them know what you think about
Absolutely.
their telltales.
It's a great way to get a little taste of somebody's writing, and we talk to a lot of writers. So we've got a lot of these. Get after it. Somebody's bound to write in a way, in a narrative voice that you would appreciate if you're ever book shopping, because we're talking to you too here, readers. We'll find you.
And bookstores.
On the internet.
Mm.
Ryan, how do we end these?
boringly.
No.
Sad face.
Mm.